What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, and I am coming to you. I got to give my thoughts on this Manny Pacquiao versus Jeff Horn bout. And it's something everybody is talking about. I've already written quite a bit about the fight on Forbes. So you can check out my writer profile in the description of this video. But I figured I might as well come and kind of speak to my YouTube crowd and kind of give you guys what I think about the fight. Well, a lot of people, actually, I'd venture to say most people, are calling the fight a robbery. And I'll just say, just to kind of just bluntly state where I stand with the fight, I don't see it as a robbery at all. If you saw the judges' scorecards, I would totally admit one of those judges' scorecards was absolutely ridiculous. The 117 to 111, there is no way in the world Jeff Horn or Manny Pacquiao won this fight by 6 points. That's insane. But the two 115 to 113 cards are plausible, in my opinion. I scored the fight 114 and 114 a draw. I had Pacquiao up by a round heading into the last round, and then I thought that Jeff Horn won the final round, and thus it became the draw. There's a couple things. There's two major things that people are pointing to as if to say it's clear that Manny Pacquiao won this fight and it's clear that there was a robbery. And I'll just preface this overall thing by saying I would not have had a problem if the judges had awarded the fight to Manny Pacquiao. If it was a close decision, I would not have had a problem. That's kind of how fights go. There's rounds that are very close, that are hard to score. They can go either way. And I thought there were quite a few rounds in this fight that way. So I wouldn't have had a problem if Pacquiao had gotten the decision. But I also don't have an issue with Horn winning because I thought, like I said, there were close rounds. He stunned Pacquiao in the 6th round. I thought he pressed the action throughout the entire fight. He kept Pacquiao backing up. He was the one that was the aggressor throughout the fight. Now, there's two things that people are pointing to support their opinion about this fight being a robbery. First thing is punch stats. And I agree with punch stats, and I think there's a place, and obviously in boxing, for them. But I think when you begin to start to take punch stats as the end-all, be-all, is where you have an issue. Because I think a lot of people don't understand how punch stats are actually tabulated. Punch stats are tabulated manually. So there's literally someone ringside or at home that is watching the fight counting punches. If you've ever watched a boxing match, you know how difficult that can be. I don't care what angle you're sitting at. I don't care if you're at home. I don't care if you're ringside. That's a very difficult thing to do, to count punches. So I'm saying that to say there's a lot of room for error in that process. There's a lot of room for some inaccuracies, and there's also room for bias. The people that are counting punches are human beings. And just as we go into fights and we have an idea or a concept that we feel like this person's a better fighter or that person's a better fighter, oftentimes the hardest thing that judges have to fight against is a situation where when you come into a fight, you already think, I mean, obviously the judges know about boxing, right? You already think Manny Pacquiao is a better fighter than Jeff Horn, right? So as you're watching this fight, in your mind, subconsciously, close rounds, you're probably giving them to Pacquiao because conceptually, you thought that Pacquiao was a better fighter. Now, there are things that can change that during the course of a fight. You start to lean the other way. You start saying, wow, Jeff Horn's doing this. So now you start giving close rounds there. So you have every single round is a new story. And every single round, you have to completely flip the script back to 0 so that you can call the fight on the up and up. If you don't do it that way, then you're prone to the bias. And this is a very tough job, which is why I don't envy the job or the duty that judges have to go through. So I'm just saying that to kind of put punch stats into perspective. The punch stats were widely in favor of Pacquiao. And I don't even know that I disagree with the fact that Pacquiao landed more punches. But again, that is not the end all be all of judging a round or a fight. If what judges, first of all, judges don't have access to punch stats. So when you're judging, you're not allowed to have any punch stats there. That's something that is totally for fans. It's totally for fans, has nothing to do with judging. Also, judges cannot hear the commentary that is on the television broadcast, which is a huge deal because the commentary from a television broadcast often shapes the opinion of people that are watching, especially when you consider the vast majority of people that are watching a boxing match are not trained to judge a fight. That's most people are not. Most people do not know how to judge a fight. They don't know how to judge a round. They don't understand that you don't judge a fight in totality. People watch a fight and at the end they go, well, I think so-and-so won. That's not how fights are judged. You have to judge it round by round. And you may feel like so-and-so got the best of the other guy or the other girl, but when you actually add the rounds up, if you have been judging it round by round, sometimes fights are a lot closer than you thought they were from judging what I call it with schoolyard criteria. That's kind of how that goes. So I always mention that whenever there are discrepancies with the way a fight is judged, and I think this is really key for this particular fight. Horn was very awkward, and he was much bigger than Pacquiao. He pushed Pacquiao around the entire fight. Much of his tactics were dirty. He was rubbing his glove across Pacquiao's face. He was pushing. He was leaning on him. That was a game plan that he was executing. Now, the referee could have been a little bit more stringent with him, but he wasn't. That very well could have had a lot to do with the fact that the fight was taking place in Australia and Jeff Horn is Australian. You will get no argument from me on that end. But without those penalties, this was in no shape or form a blowout fight on either side. This was a close fight. Timothy Bradley, and God bless him, and I sincerely mean that, because something mentally is not clicking right with him, and it might have something to do with the wars he's had in the ring. But he was having a very difficult time articulating himself. But he was able to let us know that he thought this fight was very close. But he was being overpowered by Teddy Atlas, who was so insanely biased. Him and Joe Tessitore, and I love those two guys. I love those two guys, period. But as a gamer, I have an attachment to them because of Fight Night, Fight Night champion. They're the voices. They did not do themselves proud on Saturday night on the ESPN broadcast. They were very biased. If you watch the fight, they were screaming their heads off whenever Pacquiao did anything. Whenever Jeff Horn did anything, they were almost completely silent. Tim Bradley was about the only one acknowledging what he was doing. And anybody says, well, he hates Pacquiao, he fought him. That's actually not true. He loves Pacquiao. He is a fan of Pacquiao. Those guys, after they fought, they go out to lunch. They go out to dinner. So they don't have a thing at all, right? And if anything, Bradley would have wanted Pacquiao to look dominant against Horn, because why would he want this guy who had never fought anybody of any substance to appear to be able to beat a guy that most people don't believe he ever beat? So I'm not even going to get into my opinion on the first Pacquiao Bradley fight, but it is what it is. So that's the other thing you see people talking about is facial damage. So they're looking at Jeff Horn, and Jeff Horn's right eye is swollen and he has a cut over it. And they're like, and Pacquiao doesn't have any marks on his face except for the cuts around his hairline that came from the headbutts. So it was like, so how in the world did this guy win the fight and this guy didn't? That is the most amateurish criteria for judging a fight I've ever seen in my life. You should see the other guy stuff. Man, that is for a fight in the street. in boxing, you can land 2 or 3 big shots on a guy in the right spot, open a cut and start swelling, but that's 2 or 3 punches. It's not, that doesn't mean you won the fight. It doesn't even have to mean you won the round, because that's a moment where you can cut. And the swelling, once swelling has been caused, once a hematoma has been caused on any part of the body, in any part of the head, whatever brushing or contact with that is going to cause that to continue to swell. A cut, those cuts, we don't know if those cuts came from punches. We didn't even hear the analysis of that. We didn't see the replays. We don't know how that happened. All I'm saying, and even if they did come from punches, all I'm saying is you can't use facial damage as a way to say this guy obviously got the better of this guy. Some fighters' faces don't cut as easy. It's all maybe the shots. It's so much. There are so many variables involved in that. That is just a very shallow piece of criteria. You have to go by what you see, because that is what the judges are going by. The judges are going by the action in the ring. They're watching it. They're watching Horn push Pacquiao back. They're watching Horn push the action. They're watching him be the aggressor. They're watching him throw more punches, which punch stats confirmed that he did throw more punches. They're watching that, and that becomes one of the elements that can oftentimes make it appear to a judge that a guy is or girl is winning a round. I'm also, I'm not alone in feeling that this fight was a close fight, and I'm going to share with you guys on the screen. I just wrote this article, and so because I mean, I'm not unlike anyone else when I have an opinion that is not necessarily the most popular one, which let's be honest, that happens to me quite a bit. But when I have an opinion that is not necessarily the most popular one, I go looking for other credible people who may have shared that opinion. So I did this article just a few moments ago, and actually doing pretty well. Great, I'm glad to see that. These 10 credible people don't think that Pac-Man was robbed. So we scroll down here and we go through it. And I got to talk about Stephen A. Smith. I will not, promise you, I will not let this stream go past without addressing Stephen A. Smith, because I'm going to be totally honest with you. It was flat embarrassing. It really was. But I'm going to get into that in a second. Here's Paulie Malignaggi, and here's Michael Woods talking about Tim Bradley. Tim Bradley struggled really bad to express himself. And it really got bad during the post-fight press, or during the post-fight interview with Stephen A. Smith. We all know Stephen A. Smith has the gift of gab. He is quick. He's articulate. And at this point, Tim Bradley just could not keep up with him. And Stephen A. Smith just bullied him off of his opinion. He really did. And it was unfortunate, actually. Earlier in the night, Tim Bradley thought he was in Argentina. And then made another comment about Japanese fighters, calling them Japans. So it was a rough night for Tim altogether. But Paulie Malignaggi is might be a former fighter, current fighter, whatever, former world champion. He suggests that you watch this fight on mute, because it replays tonight. Actually, I think it just started actually on ESPN2. So if you reach for your DVR and DVR, and you can check it out in a second. Watch the fight on mute. He said, I watched it live in a bar without being able to hear the commentary, and that turned out to be a blessing. Brian Campbell for CBS says, you notice neither Pac-Man or Bob Arum, Manny Pacquiao's promoter, called this fight a robbery. Both knew it was a close fight, and Pac-Man left the door open. The loud television analysts created groupthink again. I've seen this happen so often, man. The television broadcasts are so biased or so in favor of one person, and you got a lot of people, man, that don't really know exactly what they're watching. They're fans of different levels, and that sways them quite a bit. Paulie Malignaggi checked in about the punch stats. He said, last I checked, punch stats weren't a factual way of determining what landed and what didn't. Your eyes are. I educated you, not the other way around. So he was going back at someone who came at him on Twitter. Sergio Mora is also a fighter. He says these stupid stats are made for the casual boxing fan. The even less informed fan actually needs an actual image of a head and torso. So he's talking about the head and torso thing that comes up. I'm not going to knock that overall. Conceptually, I think it's great. But until you have something that is scientific and, you know, boxers have sensors on the gloves or some sort of way to determine where these shots are landing definitively, we can't take this as the gospel for judging a fight. But let's go down and look at some of the people who thought this fight was close. Daniel Cormier, the UFC light heavyweight champion, who also has a little bit of a boxing background. He's a pretty good boxer. I mean, he didn't box on a high level, but Daniel knows combat sports. He knows scoring. He says 115 to 113 for Manny wouldn't surprise me, but he had it 114 to 114, which is the exact same score I had. Paulie Malignaggi says, because I've been on the wrong side, I have no patience when people call fights like this a robbery because it takes away from real robbery fights. He doesn't think this fight was a robbery. Michael Woods, who used to write for ESPN, now he writes for the Sweet Science, I believe, says, I haven't looked at the stats. I saw lots of close rounds. I need to rewatch this fight. He also says, which ended up being a reply, or someone was replying to this in the tweet right here on the screen. It says, without Atlas and Stephen A. Smith fresh in their ear after hearing Manny, Arum, and Freddie Roach not cry robbery, the robbery talk has settled some. Scott Donnelly says, I've watched it twice now, and I think Horn won fair and square. And the UK TV pundits here all had Horn winning. Another, let's see, Caleb Truax, who is a fighter. He is a middleweight. He fought Danny Jacobs for Danny Jacobs' WBA title in Chicago sometime, maybe a year or so ago. He says, more telling to me is Freddie didn't blast it. He would have went 8 bleep if he thought Pac was robbed. Didn't think Pac-Man was robbed. Okay, Brian Campbell says it was a very close fight, and he had it a draw. He says seems a stretch for all 3 cards, including that 117, 111 for Horn, which I agree with, but he did push the pace all night. Tom Craze of BoxBet, also affiliated with BoxRec.com, said that add Pacquiao Horn to the close fight, not a robbery foul. It honestly feels like a fight has to be a KO in the first round to avoid more tired controversy. Al Bernstein. Now, if you don't respect Al Bernstein in boxing, then I'm not sure you really know what you're watching. Says, all righty then, 117, 111 for Horn is wrong. I agree. 2-point win for Horn is possible, but maybe a stretch. I could see a draw or a close win for Pac-Man. I have no issues with that. Now, someone that was responding to me on Twitter, Dan Waits, who's also a writer, said he had to switch it off, talking about the commentary. Was very close, could have been scored to either. 117 and 111 is obviously stupid. Definitely not a robbery, though. Ryan Sangala quoted Bob Arum saying it could have been 7-5 for Manny. Yeah, but you can't argue with the result. He's live in Brisbane and Australia for the fight. R.A. the Rugged Man. Anybody that knows knows Wu-Tang is familiar with that guy. But R.A. the Rugged Man is a intense, real boxing fan. If you follow him for a while, you know he's not some fly-by-night come in and just start talking boxing off the top. No, this guy knows boxing. He says, just watch the Pacquiao Horn fight. Pac hasn't looked special in a long time. I edge Pac-Man, but I've seen way worse quote-unquote robberies in boxing. Marcos Villegas, I believe he is with Fightland TV. It says it was close, competitive, but Manny edged it out for me. I had him up by 1 point. Right, so he calls the fight close, says Manny won by 1 point. Clearly, these scores, and these are all creditable people. None of these people are calling this fight a robbery, okay? This fight was not a robbery. I am not arguing with anybody who says that Pacquiao won the fight. I would not argue with that. I take exception with people that call this fight a robbery because that is not what it was. So I had to take some time to come in and let you guys know my thoughts. I appreciate you watching as always. God bless. Peace.